Hi, it's Courtney Hahn, and welcome to Coffee with Courtney. I'm so excited for you to take this journey with me. So as we start, I wanted to talk about a subject that has been really close to my heart and mind for well over a year now, and that is, what does it look like to really live in community with one another? I think a lot of at least my ideas about community changed during the quarantine time of COVID. We have so many places of accidental community in our lives, or at least we did prior to quarantine. Some of us have them back now and some of us don't. But we would, bump into people at the grocery store and have a conversation, see people in the school line, or when we were at work, in all the simple ways. There was so much more time where we would have pickup conversations, and we didn't have to be so intentional about the people that we invite into our world. We didn't have to ask so many questions about who we can invite into our world and under what circumstances. And I'm not trying to comment on that broader issue. I am trying to comment on what I learned once the accidental community in my life was taken away. And in part, I learned it through my son. He is a fellow introvert, so he doesn't need as many people in his life as my daughter does, that is constantly wanting more people. But when we went into the quarantine period of time, he actually ended up struggling far more than she did. He was very upset about the lack of people in his life, and that surprised me at first. And then I realized that for Elizabeth, wanting more people than she has is sort of a state of existence for her. She's used to it. And so she'll curl up in my lap or talk her brother into playing with her, or, ask daddy for tickles. She finds solutions to her lack of people when she wants them. But Matthew had been used to being very content with the accidental community of his life. He would go to school, and he'd sometimes have basketball or tennis or something after, but he got enough people time to make him feel pretty pleased. But once we were home and that went away, he really struggled with loneliness, probably for the first time that he'd really had that feeling. And it made me wonder how much we rely on accidental community to fill our need for people, and whether or not accidental community really works. I mean, certainly it's nice to have some of that busyness and to have those light conversations with acquaintances and friends, but when we really think about community, the kind of people that we do life with, that we dig in with, that we get deep with, we don't have big change moments. We don't have real accountability conversations. We don't have these kind of transformative, share my joy, share my pain conversations with people that we just see accidentally. Those conversations are only going to happen, I believe at least, in these really intentional relationships that we have with one another. So I started asking questions about how many of those relationships do I really have? How many of those relationships do we have in our broader culture, in our church? Are we really connected to one another in a way that promotes life, that gives room and safe places for change to happen? Are we doing real community, or are we settling for the busyness of accidental community? And as I was asking myself those questions, I'm like, okay, well, how would I measure it if I felt like, yes, this is a community that I'm really connected to. I know it because. So this is my idea. You guys can give me feedback on how this plays out for you. I'm proposing that we don't have genuine community with a group unless within that group there are at least 3 people that we would share joy and pain with. So the happy things of our lives, the sad things of our lives. Do we have 3 people in a given group, in our small group, in our Bible study, in our church at large, in a group that you serve with or a book club? do we have 3 people inside those groups that we would share joy and pain with? I'm curious to see what your thoughts are about that. Is that number too high? Is it too low? I feel like if we only have one person that we're sharing those things with inside a group, we're not really connected to the group, we're connected to that individual. And I don't think it's fair for us to be sharing all of our stuff with everyone all the time. Certainly we need to have some discernment about that. So that's why I'm playing with the number of 3, that if we have at least 3 people in a group that we can share those things with, we're connected to them in a way that can allow for transformation and growth. And when I was thinking about why it matters, it's because in my mind, we really weren't intended to do life and godliness apart from the encouragement and the discernment of one another. I so greatly miss when I do not have other people who can see into my life, who can show me the things that are flawed, who can help me replace lies with truth and help me choose to live in that truth. And I have more of those people now than I've ever gotten to have before. And the blessing of that, the excitement that I have from getting to share life with those people, even the times when they drive me nuts and I want to get frustrated because change is hard, right? Getting to do life with those people has enriched my world so much and greatly changed my walk and allowed for growth and transformation in my life. And when I think about what I want our women's ministry to be like, that is right at the core, right? I want it to be a safe place where transformation can happen, where we can become like Christ together and individually, and we have the resources to do that in one another. I'm increasingly convinced that change very rarely happens when we don't have some safe place or a safe person or a safe group of people to do that change with. It's just so hard and scary often to think about change, that when we don't have the support and encouragement of one another, I just don't think we choose it very often. And I think God knows that. I mean, in Scripture we see the one another verses all throughout the New Testament. They encourage one another and bear with one another and, come together with one another consistently. We're encouraged to prioritize our walk, not just with Him, but in community with one another. And that's what I'm really passionate about, Abide being, for the women of our church, that it is a place where we invest in one another, come together, have those 3 people that we share our joy and our pain with, and invite one another in to what the Lord is doing in our lives to transform us. I was meeting with a friend the other day, and she had a word that came to her mind as we were talking, and that word was flourish. And when I thought about that word, this is what I ended up writing, and I wanted to share that with you. Flourish, grow, not gradually, but with vigor. Develop, not frantically, but with health. Because it's time now. The stage is set, the ground prepared, the heart's ready. All the right pieces are in place to be nourished. Trust the ground and the timing. Rest in the safe place that I, God, have provided for you. Stop looking for the threats that don't exist here. This is my ground, prepared for you. Rest in that and flourish. That's my prayer for you, that you have sacred ground prepared by the Lord in which you can flourish and grow. And I pray that increasingly Abide becomes that for me, for you, for each other, that we become a place of safety, of support, for growth and transformation. Look forward to talking to you guys again next week.